like the way some of them have regressed and gotten worse individually is just so extreme.
No,
like
no, Worlds. It's Worlds. It's Worlds, baby. It's Worlds, Broxah. Hello and welcome to the jungle with Medic, Cubby, that way, and Broxah. But the thing is, we're all going to be aligned up anyway, so that me pointing doesn't really matter. Anyway, today we'll be talking about the LCS Championship, the problem with Riot's emotes that were released last week, and first off, we're going to get on into the LEC Season Finals. Now, I don't want to use this word, but I'm going to use it. I think this last week of League of Legends internationally was the most boring week of League of Legends I have seen in a long time. I think we had 2 days where every series was a sweep. And apart from the FlyQuest NRG series, where NRG did manage to pick up one game because Bwipo decided he needed to play a game of Volleyball. It wasn't close in the majority of these games, and I think the expected winner won every series. So lads, if we start off with the LEC, give me something. Give me something for us to talk about.
Well,
true.
Well,
I was about to say.
my SK prediction went up in flames, so you guys have. Yeah, I can take heat for that.
So
that's not boring.
how did you expect the series to play out? I know we talked about it last episode, but I just want to ask again, what did you think was going to happen? And then we can compare to what actually happened.
I had a little bit more faith that, maybe this year Niski would be able to step up a little bit more. That wasn't the case. The series, like, game one was close-ish, and then BDS turned it, and it just got way worse from there. And yeah, it just feels like SK ran out of steam this year. And yeah, I don't really know what other way to put it. They were on fire in the regular season. Playoffs weren't good. I was hoping that going back to the drawing board, kind of like what MDK did, would help. And it did not. They came out very flat.
Honestly, might be a good way of putting it. I don't know what's up with some of these teams' organizations, because it's happened so many times in the past that SK would look pretty good in the regular season, but then things just always fall apart in playoffs, and it doesn't really matter what players they have, or coaching staff, or whatever. It just doesn't go their way, and it's kind of a shame because they did look really good in the regular season. And I think coming into the series, I definitely expected more of a fight, and I think up until a certain point, like 18 minutes in, I believe it was in game one, SK actually had a huge early advantage, but then they started Drake with a really bad setup. 4 people died, the game was completely thrown away, and from that point on, pretty early in game one, till the end of the series, SK just didn't have any breathing room, they didn't have any chance, and they just got demolished. And I think the BDS we saw was also the BDS that we expect to come around in playoffs, the gatekeepers that, have such a good understanding of how to play team fights and their coordination and whatnot, and only G2 and Fnatic can beat them. And I think Adam specifically also deserves a shout out, because he was someone that had to perform going up against Irrelevant, who's considered one of the best top laners in the league. And he performed while playing champions he's not exactly known for. Like, there was like a Cassandra, but he also played Cassiopeia and Kennen. And I think that was very respectful and made quite a difference too.
Yeah, I think his Cassio was really interesting, because Nuke is known for his Cassio. And we asked Nuke at the end of the series, like, who was better, and he was like, actually, I think Adam's Cassiopeia is just better than mine generally. So,
oh wow,
I was pretty happy with the way Adam performed. And when we talked about the struggles that BDS were having in the past, we said Adam is the guy that used to be this difference maker that really hasn't been there for them this year. So I think overall, the reversion of BDS to this, like, couple of tanks, couple of carries style really helped out, and giving Ice something he can just have more impact in the game on it is so powerful for them as a team. For SK, I thought the Luon that we saw early on didn't really show up through the season finals. Like, League so much at the moment, especially early game, is defined by how well a jungle and a support synergize and how good they are at being at the same page and then enacting this like 2-man roaming gank squad or vision setup or whatever. And I just think Isma and Luan weren't really on the same page at this season finals. I wonder, there might be a little bit of a language barrier. I know Luan does speak some English, but there's always a risk there. And I think that it just kind of bit SK in the butt, right? Yeah, they had the Korean bot lane honeymoon phase, and then since then, they really haven't been able to find that form again. And as much as Irrelevant and Rahel can do, isn't enough to get the rest of the players over the line.
It definitely is a bit of a shame, because I mean, I feel like there's for the rest of the year going to be so many what ifs around this SK squad and what could have happened if they played at their best, because ever since Rahel and Luan joined, they did look so dominant. But now, suddenly, we're back.
Yeah.
I was about to say where we've always been, or at least for the last couple of years, with G2, Fnatic, BDS, and MDK being our top 4. And even, you know, if some of the other teams looked really good at times, like I think both SK, GX, and also Carbon Corp, that looked really strong by the end of summer, deserve a shout out, but they just have such a hard time catching up. It's kind of brutal.
Yeah. I really appreciate the Casio for BDS in both those games. Like, not just the fact that Adam played it, but all, like, having it be flexible, and I think where it was in both drafts is actually quite good. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see. This is a pick that like BB was pulling out at Worlds last year, right? And I'm wondering if that's going to actually help push BDS over the edge, because if I'm not mistaken, they need to win this best of 5 against G2 in order to still be in contention for Worlds. Does this decide it? Because I know if G2 wins, MDK's in.
Spot, they'd then be top 3, and the other 2 teams, Fnatic and MDK, would go to Worlds. If G2 lose this, whichever of the last 3 remaining teams makes it to the finals of the finals, they go to Worlds. So, yeah, it's kind of fucked that G2 lost early on, because if they hadn't, then it would just be whichever team joins G2 in the top 3, whichever 2 get up there, then it's through. For BDS, I think they're screwed. I'm going to be honest. When we watched the G2 Giant X series, G2 looked not 100% the best team I've ever seen, but much better than we'd seen from them at any other time. I will say, G2 played against Giant X, who were probably the weakest team in the season finals. Between them and SK, I think probably Giant X slightly weaker. So taking a lot out of that series would be disingenuous. But G2 look better, right? And if they can just play the same way against BDS, I struggle to see how BDS are going to do this like scale to late game, get towards a good position, and then take over the game against a team of the caliber of G2. No, it was only 6 minutes longer than our fastest ever best of 5.
That's pretty rough. It kind of makes me wish that
they kind of got fucked by the season finals format as well. We'll talk about that later on in the show, guys. You stay tuned. You like and subscribe, and we'll make sure to talk about that in about 20 minutes time.
We're at Flames to formats as always in here, you know, play the hits. I mean, my favorite part about that series was the Galio top, because I heard so many rumors of Galio top actually getting played during MSI, because it was good in the lane swap scenario. And it's like the first time we saw it in a pretty decent situation for it against the Rumble Malachi topside. And did it have the biggest impact in the game? No. But did I think it was decent in that draft? Yes. So I appreciate they pulled it out. That was my entertaining like piece of that series.
Well,
Besides that
G2
series is a bit of a thumping.
Some really smart and interesting adaptations. For example, in the first series versus MDK that they ended up losing, how they played was one thing, but just from a draft and playstyle point of view, they completely changed everything. Like, Caps went from playing 0 marksman in a 5-game series to now playing Smolder, Corki, and Tristana. And
yeah, they're back.
Like, the fact they only played mages in the MDK series was really strange, because they had so much success with him playing marksman before. And I don't have any insider info, but it kind of feels like, or looks like, that they just wanted to see if they could get away with playing mages only and not give up any info or whatever. But now, he plays marksman again. Yike is back in support duty, playing Ivan and Maokai, and all of a sudden, it feels like G2 is almost playing on an easy mode again. Of course, it doesn't only come down to that. Like, they also played smart in terms of macro and team fighting and all that, but I think they definitely came in with an entirely different plan that made them look like a much better team. Like, GX got murdered.
Yeah, and for them, that kind of, for both SK and GiantX, it's a shitty situation to be in, right? Because you lost games you were expected to lose. It's August, and it is August? Yeah, it's August. And we're not going to see you till January now. It's like a while away. Are there players from these two teams that we would like to see again next year? Are there people that I mean, obviously, we want to see all the players again, like, it's good to see them winning, good to see them playing, but, like, if you were to pick one or two players from both teams where you're like, this guy must be in the LEC next year or in a league, or who are we going for, lads? You want me to start? I'll start. Jackies. Okay. Get Jackies on a team, man. Get him on a team. He's a good player.
That was mine.
Give him another year to develop. Yeah. He's going to be really good. I also really think Irrelevant's very solid. So I'd like to see more Irrelevant. I think he's a very good top laner, and often is let down by his team.
Yeah. Jackie's really came to his own this split. It was really fun to watch him actually find his footing as a player, because I wasn't like, he had a pretty tough winter, and spring was just kind of like meh. Like, it was like a little bit of the same, but this split, yeah, it really felt like he was one of the bigger reasons why GiantX was actually more competitive this split.
Well, I already took those. So you have to pick new
answers when it comes to this group. Yeah, I'm gonna hope that Rahel sticks around, and hopefully we see Rahel, I guess, like, stay at that level or like maybe increase it. I'm not sure. There's a lot of I'd say that history says that when you leave the Korean server, sometimes your skill recesses, especially as a NA fan. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen with Rahel, because I do feel like he's a strong AD in that league.
I mean, Irrelevant and Jackies obviously are the first two coming to mind for me as well. I have a feeling Niski is much more important to SK than you would think right now after watching the recent games. Especially at the start of the year, like, literally everybody, coaches, players, and SK made it clear how important Niski was, and his synergy with Isma and ability to roam and help his teammates is what even brought them to this point, or part of what. And I think he's definitely someone that SK will continue to build around. I mean, I think for both of the teams, it's pretty easy choices. Like, you have two really good solo laners on one side, you have a strong upcoming mid laner in Jackies on the other. I'm a bit curious to see what's going to happen to someone like De Antonio, who's been playing in the ERLs for as long as I can remember. Like, I think he came into the ERLs in like 2018 or so, starting his career in Spain. Finally gets his chance to play in the LEC, and while he had an incredibly bad start, he did make a pretty good comeback and had a lot of games where he looked pretty solid. And I think usually just trying to see how things could play out for some of these rookies once they get experience and come into the second year is a risk that can often pay off, especially if you're one of these teams that aren't expected to go for the trophy, like try to find some of these hidden diamonds really. But yeah, I mean, realistically, both of these teams are going to look completely different next year. Like, every single year going into the first split, there's countless player and roster changes on every team. So it always feels bittersweet seeing teams with potential and that had great moments go out like this. But part of the experience being a pro player.
I mean, it's also part of, like, just competitive anything, right? Like, sometimes a team with a good player will lose, and that happens all the time. And I think there's no doubt in my mind that the better two teams won this weekend in the LEC, right? Like BDS was better and G2 were better. So let's move on to kind of predicting what we think is going to happen. We'll finish off LEC and then we'll move over to LCS for our next topic. We have MDK versus Fnatic and G2 versus BDS this week. Now, I am a BDS ambassador, and that often means that I will mollycoddle my words, and I'll talk about BDS in a more positive light. You know, I'll talk about Adam's champion pool and Nuke, how he can control the mid lane, and how in the bot lane, Ice is always going to be a hyper carry, but they're going to get fucking slammed this weekend. Like, G2 are going to poop all over them. I don't think it's going to be close. I think maybe BDS will get a game from G2, like, making some dumb mistakes in the early game, and Ice gets really accelerated, but I cannot look past G2 in this series. I think it's going to be... Okay, I say slammed. It's probably going to be a 3-1. No, I'll go 3-0 G2. I think it's going to be a 3-0.
I feel somewhat the same way. Like, I'm looking at the series, like, does BDS get a game or not? I don't really see a way that I'm curious, like, what they're going to attempt to do to throw G2 off their game. Because I feel like BDS in the past has really benefited from, you know, as like Broxah was talking about earlier, just Adam being a force in the top lane, like having a few curveball picks for him to throw out that can maybe catch a team off guard that he plays better. I don't think he's... Like, it's been hard to get edge against BB all year, but also I think Adam had a really nice series. It's probably the best sign for BDS moving forward, because I think that sometimes just having that matchup go better on the top side can really open things up for them later on. I appreciate that they prioritize getting Ice on carries. I don't want to see them play any more Ziggs. Yeah. I don't see how they get G2. I will say that against G2, I really am tired of seeing Hans Sama get Ashe. I think that they played really well with, like, I don't know how this champ keeps on getting through. I think Ashe is, like, already really strong to begin with, but I would at least deny Ashe and go from there. I do think that that really helps G2 snowball games forward.
I think it's interesting that you're pretty much touching the exact two things I wanted to say. Like, I don't want to see G2 having Ashe if BDS is still any chance of winning the game. And, I also think BDS is going to have to bring a surprise in some way, ideally starting already in draft, because everything that BDS does well, like, you know, they're usually decent laning, they're great objective setup, they're macro, they're team fighting. G2 does as well, but better.
Yeah.
And in almost every way, that's just a better version of BDS, right? More well-rounded. So they're going to need to bring in not just one cheese or one surprise that works for one game. They're going to need a lot of them. And I think if you are on the BDS side, and I'm not sure if they're going to do this, because obviously they have to convince themselves they're better at playing standard. But if you go in and you log in standard draft, you're destined to fail. Unless they have, like, the scrims of an absolute lifetime and improve a ridiculous amount, or G2 just chokes. But surprises in some way. And again, like, they already brought some in the SK series with the top lane picks, for example. It's not impossible that they can spice it up one way or the other. But
yeah, I mean, it's true, but, like, it was only 2 weeks ago we saw BDS play up against Fnatic and get absolutely ripped apart, right? And, like, as much as sometimes it's easy in esports and just generally in, like, when you review things to be like, the most recent thing is the thing that I will put the most weight on, right? It's like, yeah, I do put weight on the fact that BDS played well this weekend. However, they were playing up against SK, and 2 weeks ago I saw them get absolutely raffle stomped by Fnatic, right? And, like, Fnatic, again, it's the same with Fnatic, right? Fnatic against MDK. Fnatic looked good, right? But does that discount the fact they got absolutely destroyed by G2 in the finals like a month ago? No. We're looking at trends, and I think the trend for BDS is good. However, it's G2. And you can say, you could argue G2. The same thing for G2, right? They lost to MDK, their early games were poor, they tried to fight back in the mid game. We saw their early games be poor against Fnatic as well, right? But G2 have, at least for me, more chapters in the book of them being good than BDS do at the level that they need to be, right? So I give G2 a little bit more leeway. It's also why BDS were absolutely screwed by the fact that G2 went to the lower bracket. Because I would take BDS over MDK, I think. But I mean, that's a closer one. Like that. I would. See that
I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Again, like trend wise, because going into that series, like MDK were what, like 11-21 since winter, and like really were streaky. But I do feel like MDK like went back to the drawing board, and it's been really funny actually seeing the effect of that series on the EU ladder. Like I've seen so many games where
I hate it.
It's marksman top
every
and tank
solo
mid.
queue game. My top lane is like, I got ganked once. Please come help me.
I'm sure you guys are.
Like, nah, man. You pick Corky into Ornn and you're losing the match.
I'm wondering if you guys have seen that.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, well, you know, I had the orange should have been mid because I haven't seen a lot of that get played, but I do really appreciate and respect what MDK did in that series, but I find it like so funny just to how us as a podcast, like every single time we see G2 lose, we're just like, yep, nope, it's fine, it's G2, just really doesn't matter, you know, they're just gonna bounce back, have a different read, they're the best team, and so far we've yet to
win
wrong.
The series.
So,
probably the biggest series win of the team's career.
Oh,
they did
huge.
beat Golden Guardians to make it into the Worlds last year, so that was also pretty big. But like, BDS do not win playoffs usually. They don't win best of fives against like the top 3 teams. And it would be an incredible win for them. I just don't see them doing it, right? And because of that, probably not going to make Worlds.
It's interesting, right? Because I mean, realistically, from this point on, G2 should beat every team that's left 3-0. Like, they should completely stomp everyone. It shouldn't even be close. It's like gigantic failure if they don't win the split, especially after winning the previous 3 leading up to season finals. And the team that's going to be closest to them in terms of strength and power is Fnatic. But Fnatic haven't won a split since 2018. That's 6 years ago at this point in time. So it's like the main contender that can win on an amazing day if everything comes together. Like I think their players are solid across the board, but they haven't been able to make it for 6 years.
I guess the question is, why do you think Fnatic are their biggest rivals then? Because like they play MDK. MDK just beat G2 and have won a split more recently. Why is Fnatic above them in your estimations? I'm not saying you're wrong in thinking that. I just want the discussion. You know.
Sure. I think Fnatic in a standard game of League of Legends is going to have a much higher chance of competing with G2. I think next time G2 plays MDK, they would be much more prepared for Mervin's picks top. They will actually draft smarter themselves, setting caps up for success with marksmen, trying to find more supported picks for their jungler and just having stronger team fighting and better macro overall. And I think the G2 we saw in that series, like I don't want to take anything away from MDK, but G2 looked quite bad compared to what we expect to see from them. I think Fnatic at their best have firepower in every role to match them individually, which is the first step. I don't think MDK does. And we have seen times in the past where Razork would destroy Yike. Like, I think when it comes to the MVP of the league currently, Caps is number 1 by far. But my second one would be Razork.
Yeah.
Like, he's for sure the best jungler that we have in the LEC this year.
Who is your number 3 on the voting, quickly? Who is your number 3?
So, I voted, like, the other day for this. MVP of the split. And I really struggled with 3, because Caps and Razork were quickly locked at 1 and 2. So I didn't want to be the type of person who votes for players on the same team, because I think it's really boring and feels a bit awkward, especially for MVP if you choose players from the same team.
Okay. It's also MVP of the year, not the split, importantly.
Yeah, of the year, that's true. And I wanted it to be someone from BDS, because I think overall they've been the 3rd best team, and I chose Ice.
We're the same person, Mads. Exactly the same logic for my vote. I put Ice in 3rd. I wanted to see if like you'd done the same thing, but...
Well, I think even if it comes to the best AD carry overall throughout the year, Ice has been better. But I also think AD carries in the current meta don't have that much agency, because when it comes to the team fights and objective setups and whatnot, they rely on other people setting them up for success. And if somebody makes a mistake and doesn't provide the right vision or peel or cover, etc., then you as an AD carry, you can't do anything. Or in early game, if you get camped and you get no backup, you can't play the game. And so I think Ice on a G2 or Fnatic would, well, what we've seen this year, and no offense to Hansama or Noah, but he would level them up. That's why I think he's been so good. But yeah, I don't know.
I could see BB.
I would have thrown on BB, probably. Instead of 3. Yeah, but I understand, like, I'm not one where I have to have, like, a different players on like, the ballot. Like, I don't have a ballot for LCS, but if I did have one, I'd probably have Impact and Core on it for TL this year, because we only do for the split. I think they've been, like, both insane for their team.
I can definitely see BB. One of the things that I struggle with a little bit was excluding internationals, in my view. Because to me, like, if it's the MVP of the LEC, how they did internationally, it can affect it a little bit, but it shouldn't actually be part of the deciding factor. So I think BB really showed up internationally. He has been very good for G2 as well domestically. But more of what I remember of BB's strength this year was how he performed at MSI rather than... I mean, he still dominated top lane. He was still the best top laner in the league, so yeah, I think it's very valid. I kind of distracted from the topic of Fnatic versus MDK. Broxah, sorry, you were talking, I got very distracted. So you were saying Razork is second best player in the world.
Something along those lines.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Well, I actually think it's impressive how much Razork is leveled up during his time on Fnatic. Because if you asked me, I don't know when he even joined, let's say 2 years ago, my opinion would be slightly different. But like he's really, really dominant right now. And I think having him on your team alone gives you a chance of him just 1v9ing a game or two if put in the right situation. But ultimately, if I was on a team right now as a player coach and I went up against MDK, in my mind, all I would have to do is get a somewhat standard draft and match them in all 5 roles. And if you don't end up in some clown fiesta cheese draft, I'm not entirely sure if MDK will actually have the firepower to beat you. Because at that point, it's going to come down to everybody knowing how to play these standard matchups at an equal level, being really good when it comes to macro, being really good when it comes to team fighting, setups, etc. All these things that G2 and Fnatic overall throughout the year, excluding the previous G2 MDK series, have looked so much more consistent and better at. And it's also, again, this thing where maybe I'm being harsh on MDK considering how good they looked versus G2, but because they won one series, I'm not going to expect them to come in and play the series of their life twice in a row, suddenly making it to the final, right? I am skeptical, but I also recognize that there is a world where they, surprise me and beat Fnatic and make it to the final. It's not impossible.
I'm excited for this series just because I want to see what kind of read MDK has going into it. Like this is a series where legitimately, like, if we're talking about throwing out different strats and cheese, MDK proved that against G2. I mean, they went into their bag a little bit. I feel like that's the first time I've really seen this team utilize Merwin since winter. To really the skill set that everyone knew he had coming in, right? Because he was the guy coming in where it's like, man, this guy plays top lane Ahri, he plays top lane Fiddlesticks, like he has this crazy pool. And the fact that his picks, I saw instantly like BB and Oscar picking up his picks in solo queue and training them up. I'm really wondering what is MDK's read and what is Fnatic's read and response going to be to that? Because we could see a pretty weird series here. And I'd be kind of excited for that. I'm looking for, do we have any Nasus picks coming in against a marksman top or kind of, we're seeing Nasus be snuck in globally. Are we going to see Merwin Cassio? That's been played now by Adam. I really feel like we're starting to play around with some top lane picks, and that if there's going to be any chance for MDK in this series, I think their best chance is to really keep up with letting Merwin cook with his pool. Because there's no way that Oscar's going to have more experience on some of these matchups than Mirror in the top lane.
Yeah, I agree.
And I really feel like that's when Mirror
I
says
did.
best.
Speaking of adaptation, by the way, again, something's popped into my mind that I read like 2 days ago. Remember the lane swap in the first game of Giant X versus G2?
Okay.
Where they send the Ezreal top, and then they're like, oh, it's fine, guys. You know, we'll put these guys top, and he'll deal with, I think it was Cassante in the match. Is it Cassante? Yeah. And they got nothing out of it. They lost the game before like anyone had died because they were like 3k goal behind. What happened there, apparently, and there was a tweet I saw about this from one of the Giant X coaching staff. He said, what we wanted to do was pick Ziggs for the Antonio, put him bot lane, and have Patrick solo farm top on the Ezreal, and he'd just be accelerated. I'm like, that's cool. You know, if you want to adapt like that, sweet. However, if Ziggs is then banned... My suggestion is... yeah. And do you want to know why it was banned first phase? Because it was played by the Antonio like 15 times in a row in solo queue. And it's like, well, like, don't do it on your main solo queue account. Like, on my research, I could see this. Like, you should have hidden accounts for this sort of thing. Anyway, I just thought that was very funny. Because that's an example of where adaptability can go really wrong. Right, we talk about cooks in the kitchen, and it's like, oh, they're cooking. Will it be good? We saw it in game 1 of MDK versus G2 as well. Right, the Lulu top it didn't fail, but it didn't do anything for them in the game. Right, it didn't have the chance to have any impact. So if MDK overcook, which I could see them doing, because they're a very vibey team, and at the moment vibes seem great in that team. Right, they're very happy. They're like, we got over our mental hurdle by beating G2. Everyone was just having fun, even when we lost. They talked about it on Euphoria. They're like, even when we lost game 3, game 4, can't remember which one it was, we came out and we're like, that was a crazy fun series. We had a whale of a time. Let's just go into the next game, right? Sometimes when the vibes are that good, you can be too willing to accept suggestions. Like, Mirwin has a plethora of things he can play in top. But at some point, someone needs to be there who's willing to be like, hey, mate, maybe this isn't the best angle for Fiddlesticks. Now, he's a very good Fiddlesticks top player, but I worry a tiny bit about there being someone who's willing to be that voice. And if that doesn't happen, I could see MDK really swinging the other way, right? And starting to lose lose the joy that they have in League because they start losing with these strategies, right?
I think this is everything you mentioned is one of the areas where having a really, really good coaching staff is so important.
Yeah.
Like the example with Six, I brought back an old memory of mine that was a bit similar, but not entirely, where Dylan, who was currently the G2 coach, I think it was summer 2018, he wanted a free ban. So he said, Broxah, this week, drop whatever you're planning on doing in solo queue. I need you to play 30 games of Jack's Jungle so the enemy team bans it and we have and they have a locked ban against us this series. So that's what I did. I spent my entire week of solo queue playing Jack's Jungle on my main account just to get the enemy coaching staff to think, what the hell is this guy doing? We better ban this away. And I think if you do these things with an actual plan and you're mindful of it, it can be very smart. But yeah, I can't believe that in 2024 people are so committed to a certain strategy that it gets banned away and they decide to lock it in anyways because they have no plan. Like, no freaking wonder a team like that can't compete with the best teams in the league, right?
It was earlier in the split as well. One of their coaches in an interview said, "We're trying to plan a minute ahead on objectives."
Oh, so, I remember that. We were memeing about that so much backstage. That actually tilted me into oblivion. I'm like,
yeah. But like, it may have been a mistranslation or like they misspoke, but the words that came out of the coach's mouth was, we were learning as a team how to plan a minute ahead for objectives.
You know when I learned how important that is? I was taught that by a coach when I played on a Danish team in 2015. And I was told, when you walk out of base, make sure to plan a minute in advance what needs to be done so your teammates know. Here we are, all these years later in LEC. And not only is that the case, but they dare to say it publicly. I was actually tilted out of my mind when I heard. I couldn't believe it. Whew.
Yeah. So, predictions, lad. Fnatic versus MDK. I will wait for both of you to predict, and then I'll say something different to add entertainment. Also, like and subscribe. I've said that once already, but
At least
just
you're
remember.
honest.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say something different for the entertainment.
Yep.
All right.
It's the boring prediction, but I'll actually go Fnatic 3-1. I'm gonna give MDK one game where they can actually cook a little, and I feel like that's still a compliment to MDK, given the gameplay we've seen from them like for the last two splits. That they are playing better and can actually take a game. But I'm pretty confident that Fnatic gets through here.
I think
and then G2 3-0.
all the way up until the final, it's going to be 3-0. Like, G2 is going to 3-0 BDS, Fnatic is going to 3-0 MDK, G2 then 3-0 MDK, and then we have G2 Fnatic final. Like, I honestly think the gap between Fnatic, G2, and the other teams is just way too big. And
What's the finals then? Is it 3-0 G2 again? Are we just running it back? It was 3-1 last year in Montpellier, wasn't it?
I mean, G2 will be the favorite going into any matchup, right? I could see a world in which a team, or let's say a Fnatic, that I think is the second best, can take a game or even two games off of them. But I think losing in the first round and getting to play so many best of fives and having so many learning lessons in official games up until the final, I'm gonna call it an underrated strategy. I think it's really OP. I've seen it so many times in my career where I think the first example that comes to my mind is 2020 summer. I played in for Team Liquid in the LCS, and we had gotten, I think we went like 14-4 in the regular season. We were considered the best team coming into playoffs. TSM looked terrible, and they lost in the first round of playoffs. But then they played so many games throughout the entire loser bracket to the point where they started stomping everyone and looked so much better than everybody else, and they won the split. Like, getting all this practice on your hands makes a really, really big difference, and really does give a kind of buff. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think anyone's going to be able to stop G2. Also, for the MDK Fnatic series, again, I think MDK got pushed to the limit and had to show their hands when going up against G2, and I think that's going to weaken them pretty heavily in the rest of playoffs.
Okay. Cubby, do you want to hit the rest of the LEC as well, alongside the Fnatic MDK series? And the G2, yeah.
G2 are 100% going to 3-0 MDK. That's a revenge game for them. There's no chance they drop any games.
All right.
And then I'll take G2 3-1.
To Fnatic over MDK.
Yeah.
No, actually, I'm going to go MDK over Fnatic. Fuck it. 3-2 to MDK, because Oscar's going to be not able to deal with Mirwin, and he's going to bring out something really wacky, and Fnatic are going to crumble. It'll be game 5. It's Fiddle top. He just cacaws all over them, right? It's a murder in the top lane. And then, G2 are going to beat BDS 3-0. And then G2 are going to beat Fnatic 3-0, but Fnatic are going to get really close to winning every single one of the games. It's going to be like finals again.
God,
and their spirits are going to be entirely crushed. Yeah, it's gonna be that bad again, and then G2 are gonna win 3-0.
There's no way it's that
they have to have that little bit of a letdown at the end of the season. So that's what's gonna happen. I'll talk to our scriptwriters to get it in print for you all, and we'll move on to the LCS. As I said at the top of the show, the games this weekend weren't the most interesting in the world. Although, in one of the LCS series.
Yeah.
Both teams got at least one win, which is shocker. Do you want to start off? We can chat quickly about the first series, Dignitas versus 100 Thieves. Cubby?
Dignitas got absolutely dumpied on. I don't like, this is a team where I feel like they've been very averse to playing early game for the majority of the split. They oftentimes will elect to take scaling in games. I think that's fine, but they just don't really do anything early game. And pretty much game 1, they got 2v4'd at Baron, lost the Baron, and then from there, the rest of the series was just an utter disaster for them. As 100 Thieves played with Unreal Aura. They were flashing small PPs at them for the entire series with their emote change. And this team's got a nice honeymoon phase going on with Tomo. I mean, their bot lane went from being like hard losing to like actually competitive and winning. And Tomo got his revenge against Dig, who dropped him. So that was a pretty nice win for 100 Thieves. I was not expecting a 3-0. I actually had this being a close series going in, but Dignitas got kind of crapped on.
And at some point in game 3, I was thinking to myself that, obviously it's hard to say, but it looked like Dignitas just completely mental boomed from that Baron in game 1. Like,
it's the classic Dignitas Baron throw, isn't it?
That's true, actually.
You lose a Baron, you throw the series, right?
Here they are, 10 years later, still happening to them. But it was just brutal to watch, because I mean, the coordination and team play is one thing, right? But just on an individual level and whatnot, it was just heartbreaking to see how hard they get slammed by 100 Thieves. And this series that supposedly should have been pretty close just wasn't close at all. I mean, game 3 was even done in 22 minutes, right? It was kind of extreme.
Do you want a fun fact? After that Baron throw, Dignitas were no more than 200 gold in the lead in any game. That was the largest advantage they had. And that was, wait, I have the exact timestamp here. I tracked it 1 second. They were 214 gold ahead.
Oh, man.
At 4 minutes, I think, in game 3. And apart from that, it's the largest lead they had. They only got 31 gold ahead in game 1 and game 2. But yeah, I think the addition of Tomo really seems to have revitalized 100 Thieves. They actually look like a much more cohesive unit. And credit to Sniper as well. I thought perhaps with when he came in, I did wonder if he would just be like this one-hit wonder, really good Riven player, but can he actually do much else? I know he was playing in the NACL before that. It was the NACL, right? Or was it the division below that?
Yeah, but he took the summer split off after like we lost the LCS team requirements. So I'm with you. I was worried as well, actually, a little bit.
But Dignitas, less than the sum of their parts as a team. Yeah. Speaker especially, I think. For a long time, Speaker was like, he was meant to be this great NA jungler, and he was for a little bit, right? But he really seems to have fallen off a cliff recently. So we'll see where he goes next. FlyQuest NRG. Yeah. Again. Mm-hmm.
This series went as expected for me. I had FlyQuest 3-1 because, frankly, FlyQuest has just been dropping games all split in best of threes. Like I think they played a lot of 3-game series. And there was a stat that Jat kept on kind of running, which was how FlyQuest live and die by Blippo top. And we did see that a little bit in this series because there was a Voltabear that was very useless. And then the rest of the series, Blippo was very useful. And I will say, I think the best news for FlyQuest and something that I always take away from this series is I actually thought Masa and Busio were having a really good split outside of the last 2 weeks, where the last 2 weeks against Shopify Rebellion and C9, they were a little flat. These guys played really well in this series. So if they can keep that up, I do think that most teams are looking at FlyQuest as the team to potentially knock out of the World's running, as LCS is a pretty clear top 3. And if Masu and Busio play like that, it's going to be a lot harder to take FlyQuest down.
I thought Busio had a really good series, actually. His Bard, especially in game 3? Oh, yeah. Game
3.
Yeah. The Bard was really good. And
the Bard game is nasty.
I noticed in game 2 where they lost was Busio wasn't able to have as much impact, and it was Huhi who was actually out on the map a lot more. We kind of almost saw the old Huhi that we saw at Worlds last year, where he was like everywhere on the map, just doing everything. And I had a brief moment of hope for NRG, but unable to recapture that magic. They're not out though, right? Because the LCS has this. They have buys for TLC9 and then double limb for Dig and NRG. So
yeah. It's so weird, like with this NRG team, because they did win last year, and of course they did make quarters at Worlds, which was huge. But if you go through their tournament results since they got Palafox and contracts, pretty much every single split is make playoffs in middle to bottom of the pack,
Mhm.
and then get out 5th, 6th, minus the split they won, and then the split they did well at Worlds. And it's really somewhat of a bummer to see them return to this form. It just feels like Dokla and Palafox as solo laners have not been the same players that they were when they did go to Worlds. I feel like both they've had underwhelming years. And I don't know, I still feel like FBI has actually played really well on this team. I don't think it was his best series, but like overall, I think that FBI has been the bright spot. But man, NRG, like, they're so flat these days, and it's really such a bummer. It feels like they just kind of fight the fight with no direction. And they just haven't been able to recapture any of the magic they had last year at this time.
Definitely a big one, because it felt like when this came together, this team came together, a couple of individuals was handpicked that on paper didn't look like the strongest players, but the team was built with an idea of having a team where everybody is fully on the same page, and where maybe year one is not going to be particularly impressive, but then you can slowly start building towards something bigger and better, and by being really coordinated and synced, eventually everybody can level up each other individually. And we did see signs of that last year, but part of me is wondering whether actually overachieving at Worlds, I think it's fair to say, like making it to quarters as NRG, that was crazy. Kind of brought them so much satisfaction that they don't have the same motivation or willingness to give it all anymore, because some of the ways some of them have regressed and gotten worse individually is just so extreme almost. And then again, their lack of direction and team play is also pretty surprising to see. And I really wonder what they would have looked like if they hadn't gone so far at Worlds, because them achieving that is the reason that the team stayed mostly the same, right? But I don't know, like it's just kind of mind blowing how quickly things went in the wrong direction.
I mean, it's always a hard one to predict, right? Like, are they subconsciously a little comfortable? Is it just that they haven't been able to evolve into the new patch? Maybe like some of them haven't been practicing as hard. Like, it's always really hard to say exactly what's causing it. Because also, I think, like, if I look at the top 3 of the LCS, I'd say that's leveled up from last year, right? I think TL looked really good, C9 looks solid, FlyQuest looked better than they did last year. So even though NRG were able to, pick up the win, it's a little like Rogue picking up the win in the LEC a couple of years ago, right? Like, Rogue won, but then fell off a cliff. And it's like, is it them being bad? Probably to a degree, but also the rest of the teams have like evolved and improved around them, right? So, a bit of a disappointment for NRG. They do still have a matchup versus Dig to go. I think if either of these teams make it into the top 3, I'll be truly shocked. 100 Thieves may be the only challenger now. What do you think, Cubby?
I think 100 Thieves are the most likely challenger, but I still think that we're going to get FlyQuest, C9, and TL at Worlds the way it's looked all year. I will say I want to see I think the FlyQuest C9 series for me is the series I'm looking forward to for NA, because winner goes to Worlds. We don't have to deal with any of these championship points, any of that BS. Just whoever wins summer goes.
One second. Whoever wins
C9
summer
did 2-0
go to
them,
Worlds
but
from EU as well. It's just we decided to have an extra tournament at the end, right? G2 won summer and they're going to Worlds, so it's simple. True. I don't understand what the problem is.
True. I think FlyQuest can give them more of a run this time around. I still think it's going to be C9 favored, but I'm hoping that FlyQuest can actually be a little bit more competitive. So I think C9 wins, but I do hope that is actually a good best of 5, because it should be entertaining. Meanwhile, I think TL is going to clap 100 Thieves. I'll maybe give 100 Thieves a game just based on vibes, but TL's too good this split. Yeah, I don't see where TL lose.
The big question mark is also whether someone at the end of the day is going to be able to contest Team Liquid with the way they're looking and with the the skill level showcased. Like the fact that we have the two veterans, Core and Impact, looking as good as they are is one thing, but they've just leveled up so massively across the entire board. And I don't know, I'm honestly hoping we're gonna see like an absolutely dominant C9 in the FlyQuest series that just steps it up massively and goes complete beast mode. Because with the inconsistency we've seen from FlyQuest throughout the year, I have a hard time believing that they'll be an actual contender for the trophy.
Yeah.
Whereas C9, you never know.
Yeah.
I think they may have a legitimate shot, and the difference between the two teams isn't so big that they can't beat TL in a series.
I think I agree with that. In the same way, I kind of want Fnatic to clap Mad Lions, right? It's much more interesting if you have two close teams in the final than if you have two close teams in a semi-final battling to try and get to someone that's just going to beat them, right? I also think FlyQuest 100 Thieves, if FlyQuest have just been slapped by C9, could be super interesting. Because 100 Thieves, as you say, are still riding that honeymoon, like that high with the introduction of Tomo. I think Bwipo versus Sniper is an incredibly explosive matchup. I also think Quid versus Quad can be a lot of fun. Obviously, like was it the end of regular season where FlyQuest kind of just bodied 100 Thieves? It was a couple of weeks ago, right? I'm trying to remember if that was.
Yeah, that was a while. It was a while back. That Masu and Busio just kind of smacked the bot lane.
Well, right? Yeah.
So
So I think that could be quite interesting.
Yeah.
It was. Oh wow! It was almost a month ago now. Time is just disappears. End of the season always just feels a little bit crazy. But yeah, I think as Broxah says, TL should win. C9 should win. Hopefully, C9 look really good, and then fun finals.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
we have that, and then you have the lower bracket, and then
not
you have
the final.
top,
Like whoever, that's just the top three. Yeah. So, but again, like whoever wins, you're guaranteed to play on the last weekend and go to Worlds. So I think a lot of fans would be happy if TL and C9 locked it up.
I also think I'd like to see TL
the
and
FlyQuest makes competitive at least.
C9 at Worlds. I think TL. Yeah, I still think TL current form look like
they
the best
deserve
Western team.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to see G2 match up against them because I kind of want to
really
get some of that, EU NA rivalry again, right?
Same. Yeah, I want to see how far TL's come since like the last time they went international, because I still feel like G2 outperformed them at MSI, but like we did see some good stuff from TL. Yeah, I really think that TL like is continuing to grow as a team, and a lot of fans like in NA. It's fun right now. Like we actually have hopes to like send teams to quarters. There's a lot of hope that TL can make it. And I gotta say, like their baseline game is so good, just given how well and how disciplined they play map and like how consistently they do it. I think there's actually a chance.
Topic quickly. Do you like making quarterfinals? Still a huge accomplishment. And I'm trying to make this not sound like I'm just salty that NRG made it last year and G2 didn't, right? Because G2. Like they would have just beaten NRG and then they would have made quarters, right? I think in this current format, but I was trying to in my head decide if I think making quarterfinals is less of an achievement now than it used to be with the group format, and I'm not 100% sold because I remember some like people that shouldn't have made, like Albus Nox Luna made quarters, right? And they played well to make it there, but they didn't do a crazy good job. And then H2K made semis because they beat Albus Nox Luna. I was just thinking about like NRG beat TL, Mad, and G2 to make it to a quarterfinal. They didn't have to beat an Eastern team, right? G2 would have had to have beaten, D plus Kia, Weibo, lose to Genji, and then beat NRG, right? And then Weibo beat NRG, Mad Lions, and Fnatic to make it to a quarterfinal. Is that less impressive? Is it easier to make a quarterfinal with the Swiss format because we have Western teams and you're more likely to face more Western teams, right? It's not just an LPL and LCK representative you have to beat to make it in than it was before. Is it easier now?
Oh, I think that's hard to say because there's an element of luck in both formats. Like
sure,
I've
100%.
played Worlds like 4 times with the old format, and well, the first year coming to mind is 2017, where we and Fnatic were in the same group as Kingzone, the Korean team who were invincible. They just stomped everybody 6-0. But then there was also
that was
Gigabyte
Longzhu
Marines.
technically, but yeah. They changed their name for...
They were Kingzone the year later, that's true.
Yeah.
Nice memory. And then there was Gigabyte Marines and Immortals.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, in a way, would be considered a free group today. Because as a European team, you get a Vietnamese representative and an NA team, right? Then the year later in our group was IG, and then it was either 100 Thieves or Clutch. I always forget, because we had one in 2018, one in 19. And then there was another team that was called...
You had Invictus, 100 Thieves, and G-Rex that year.
Yeah, G-Rex. So again, that also is a group that you should always be getting out of. Then 2019, it was way worse, because then we had both T1 and IG. And that was not fun. But I think that proves my point.
Yeah,
like,
it does.
Be extremely lucky or extremely unlucky. And I think this time around it's the same, where, sure... It's really lucky how things.
Yeah, I'm not trying to discredit these teams, right? It was more of a thought experiment. I'm not trying to say NRG didn't deserve to make quarters.
I understand that. I think in an ideal world we would have a format that wasn't based so much around like these random drawings, because I still clearly remember Worlds last year. Like there was one draw on one day that was like so unbelievably tilting, where like the same regions were playing each other as pretty much as possible, which was very boring when we had Worlds. So I think making the drawings, you know, in a way where we don't see same region matchups as much and where it's not as luck based or random would be cool. But I also don't have a clear solution to that problem.
I think they talked about introducing cross region where you can't. Intra-region, so where you play your own region. They talked about getting rid of as many of those matches as possible, I'm pretty sure.
Didn't they extend it like an extra round for this year? Isn't that the one change in the format? Or
let me quickly... So I will say I have some knowledge of insider stuff here. So I'm going to look up Worlds Format 2024 and see if there has been an official announcement of anything, and I can't see one. So I'm not gonna say anything more on what the World's 2024 format change, if there is one, might be.
I mean, I think it's a bit of a flip. Like the funny thing is historically the NA third seed was like they had better odds, I think, to get out, or they get out more often, and a lot of that was because like if you're the third seed, like you're gonna draw one of the Kaiju teams in like LPL 1 or LCK 1, and they're gonna go 6-0 or 5-1 in the group, and then because they dominate everyone else, like you just have to beat the other two teams to maybe get through. Whereas if you were NA 1 seed, like you could draw LPL and LCK 2 or 3 seeds, and then have a really, really hard competitive group, or like you're not gonna win against those two teams.
No, finish your point. I totally interrupted you. That's my bad. Okay.
I mean, I didn't have too much else. It's just like, I feel like it's a different element of RNG, because you could have a draw where, like, KT's draw this past Worlds was so really, really hard to get out. Yeah, they got screwed on every single draw. And I mean, honestly, in the end, they ended up giving, I think, T1 maybe their most competitive series. But yeah, like if you have any other team that draw, BLG, they're probably not making it to quarters.
Kia, Weibo, LNG, and D plus Kia again to make it through. It's just the difference, right? Like I will say as well, if we had old Worlds format now, you wouldn't have easy groups anymore, because both LPL and LCK send 4 seeds. So unless one of them was knocked out in planes, assuming that planes still work the same way, like every LEC and LCS representative would have to be at least one Eastern team to make it through, and the Eastern teams would have to be, I guess. I mean, then there's the argument the LPL teams just have to beat Western teams, and it's like it's just really easy for them, right? You can put it either way, right?
Yeah. Depending on the year, though, like sometimes those
that's DRX,
right?
They were,
like, they're still going to be better than
I think this
teams.
change where there was 4 teams in both LCK and LPL came in 2020, and that was the year where, like, I still remember clearly, LGD fumbled massively, and like every time we saw them at the arena, they looked both depressed and frightened because the fans were like hunting them down online like there's no tomorrow. And that would usually be one of the Eastern teams that would struggle, right?
You say they fumbled it massively. They still took a game off Fnatic, right? They went 1-1 with Fnatic and then lost to Gen G and beat G2. Not G2, TSM.
It's more like I mean, again, and that depends on their perspective, right? Because it's always hard to say, but most of these LPL and LCK teams have so big expectations because they're all so good, and these regions could easily send 6-7 teams to Worlds that would look absolutely dominant, and you never really know going into the tournament which one of them will look the best by the end of it. Like in 2020 specifically, Suning also went to the final, but we were really close to getting a tiebreaker with Suning, which would have put them one best of one away from, potentially dropping out of groups. Like all these little things can make such a big difference and change the entire storyline.
True. I just thought it was an interesting thought experiment, right? Because I think now it's more obvious as well that you've had an easy route through, right? Because in the past it was best of ones, etc. Anyway, moving on from a topic that was not on our list at all. And as a note to everyone watching, when we started this podcast, I was like, hey guys, really boring week of League. No way we're just going to talk about a bunch of stuff. Why don't we just delay this one for next week? And then we can talk about more stuff next week. Well, on to our third topic of 6. Emotes. Now, the next 3 we're probably going to rattle through relatively quickly. So we've got our LCS predictions. We have our LEC predictions. I want to talk... I think we should generally talk a little bit about the emotes that happened. Because 100 Thieves had one of the funniest emotes in the history of the game. I had Akali doing this. It was amazing. It was announced to the world from a Riot website. BDS had a similar emote, which was a penguin fishing with a BDS hat on. It was great as well. And then over the last few days, both of those emotes have been retracted and changed to something that is less offensive, I guess, but I don't really think they're offensive anyway. It feels very odd to me that it's gone through enough process to have it announced, and then we just have it reverted immediately afterwards. Yeah, you both agree? Cool, moving on. 3 ranked splits.
No, so I want to say, I think the most interesting emote change for me was, I mean, so first of all, the Akali 100 Thieves emote, if they hadn't changed it, would by far be the most bought emote. Like,
100%. But that's why the teams make them as well, right?
Yeah, so 100 Thieves would get truckloads of money, and I'm sure they're very unhappy with the change. But the BDS emote specifically was basically the old bait ping that was removed, redone. And that one I really don't understand, because you can feel whatever you want about the bait ping, but it was being misused in a very, very toxic manner. So why would you remove it, add it into the game?
Yeah.
Again, be surprised that people don't understand why bait ping returns in a different form, being for a BDS emote, and then being removed again shortly after. Like I feel like with both of these specific emotes, it should have been really obvious what the reaction was going to be. And I think it's kind of a shame how it played out, right? Or at the very least that we didn't get some kind of a teaser or warning, because a lot of people got super excited for these 2 specific emotes just for them to be quickly changed, which just leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth. Like it's not good for Riot, it's not good for the people that were excited to use them, and it certainly is not good for the 2 teams that are missing out on a lot of free money, really.
I mean, I feel bad for BDS in that case, because they're probably like, man, the bait ping was so popular, they had to remove it, and we get it back. You know how much money we're going to make off this? Oh, boy. And then Riot's just like, nope. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's so clear to me that, like, some of those emotes were good, and, like, the teams help develop them, and then other ones were just like so generic. I know we kind of had a gut reaction this on the last episode because they were literally like they were released as we were recording, but like some of them are legitimately really cool, and like I am excited to see like some of them in use. Whereas others, I'm just like, how as a team did you end up with this? Like, did you just put zero effort in the design and Riot have no ideas for you? Like, some of these teams too, not going to be around next year as things are narrowing up globally. So it feels so awkward to have it like released this late in the season now. I think there are some rightful complaints. It's weird, but still, I appreciate the effort that Riot's putting in. It's too late,
if it's
but
a first
it's
step,
better
I'm
than
happy,
nothing.
right? Like,
and,
I think obviously it could be worked much better. We like already said, like, why release it if you're just going to take it back? I will say, Casey, I'm not familiar with your game. Last week I said I wasn't really sure why they were doing Jinx holding up a surrender as if she was surrendering. And then obviously in context, you're just spamming it at your opponent when they're losing, right? Like, that makes much more sense. I don't know why I hadn't made that connection at the time, but yeah, funny emote.
Fantastic.
Good. Also, just telling your opponents to FF over and over again, which is kind of like, for Riot, I will say, kind of borderline on what they'd usually let you do, right? Like, can I just spam at my opponents FF, 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 FF? If I wrote that in chat, I would get chat banned. So, I guess you can turn off emotes, but you can also turn off chat. Moving on, more complaints about solo queue. Broxah, you said at the start of this episode, well, before we started recording in our private extra special conversation, what do we think about 3 ranked splits a year? Well, what do you think about it? What are your thoughts? Give us your thoughts. Tell us.
It almost feels like I'm part of like some psychology session right now, and I have to tell you about all my darkest of feelings. No, but I saw a lot of discussion about the new rank split system and all, and I personally can't really figure out how I feel about it. I think there's definitely some excitement in having more ranked resets and being able to start from scratch in solo queue 3 times a year in a way, but the splits also feel so short right now. Like it's not more than 2-3 months ago that Split 2 began, and now it's been announced that on the 25th of September there's another ranked reset coming in, and I'm like, I can just feel my excitement for each ranked reset, kind of, I don't know, it's just not really there in the same way anymore, and I think, sure, reaching a high rank or reaching a goal in any of these splits is nice and all, but just knowing the reset is coming shortly after anyways feels a little bit underwhelming and disappointing for me personally. I honestly prefer it when we just have one long ranked season. But I also want to add, and this is one of the bigger issues I have, that up until a couple of days ago, I had no idea when the new rank split was starting. Like, I was searching everywhere to find out. It was so difficult to get an official date. It actually came now recently when the patch came out last Wednesday. And why is a new rank split starting September 25th? Like, that's the most random date I've ever heard of. Like,
no. Worlds.
No, but I don't care.
It's Worlds. It's Worlds, baby. It's Worlds, Broxah.
The solo queue rank split has nothing to do with Worlds. Like,
okay,
if
so
they
what
want to
happens?
do free
People
splits,
will watch Worlds, and they want to play League of Legends.
Yeah,
Will they want to do it on their account they've played on for 6 months, where they're like 300 LP lower than they want to be? Of course not. They want to start fresh, Broxah.
But it needs to be
very
logical.
demure, very cutesy.
Have each split be 4 months, so it's like 4 months at a time, or have this new rank split start on October 1st, or create some kind of system so my structure-minded brain can keep up and understand what's going on. But this just makes me so stressed out and confused. Like, it shouldn't be that difficult to get an idea of when the splits are happening. I shouldn't have to be so surprised when I find this random date the other day,
Okay. I can agree with that.
I
Okay.
will take this a step further. I do not like the rank splits. I also prefer when it was just the year. That said, If you're gonna start a rank split around Worlds, I would rather have the Worlds patch last for the duration of Worlds. If you're going to, as Riot, start a rank split then, and actually promote your flagship esports tournament,
I can vibe with that.
Just have the players play on that patch for longer. I mean, we've talked about longer patch cycles in the first place, but again, like using that to actually promote the biggest tournament going on, I feel like is a missed opportunity from Riot, especially if they are starting a rank split really when the tournament starts up. That said, I couldn't care less about rank splits.
Can you imagine if the preseason or a new split began with a patch like the day after Worlds is done? Because then you've had all the Worlds hype leading up to the final, and then everybody knows the reset happens, boom, and everybody's jumping into solo queue and grinding for the next weeks and months. I think that is actually a big brain move.
Yeah, but how will I sell lots of different skins during Worlds when lots of people are playing? If I don't buff all of their
the logic would be
champs?
that when they see Faker play a champion with whatever skin at Worlds, because it's one of the best champions on the given patch, the solo queue players are actually also playing on that patch, and it's as strong as when Faker plays it.
I can vibe with that. I do think the reason that we have 3 rank splits a year, and I think Riot talked about this at some point, is my camera keeps going out of focus, is because people like to climb to a level. They don't like to try and improve a small amount from that level. So, like, I really enjoy my climb at the moment because I'm, like, the highest elo I've ever been. I'm getting a lot better at the game. I'm climbing, right? But if I was stuck at an LP, right?
Nice.
And I was going up 20 and down 20, that's much less interesting. Because most people like to see number go up, which is also why, there's more people in Master these days, and LP games, when it was 17, people got really mad, and now it's 22 or whatever, right? So if you reset often, then people get the experience of going up. And now I will say, a lot of people will say, actually, it tires me. I don't want to do it as much, right? However, subconsciously, number go up. It's good. I just play the game because number go up, right? I think 3 might be too many. I think going down to 2 would be good. Maybe do 2 5-month ones and then have a 2-month preseason after Worlds. But I don't see it going back to 1 ever. Because I think people will you just burn out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't either, right?
I mean,
I think that's the psychology of it, is that eventually you'll stop playing because you're going up, say, from Diamond 3 to Diamond 2, and then down to Diamond 4, and then back up to Diamond 2, and then down to Diamond 4. It's like, what's the point?
So you're just saying like TikTok brain, and also like we can't make sure that the youth actually feels failure.
It's not TikTok brain. No, the psychology has been true
right?
forever. Like it's nicer to do something new, or feel like you're doing something new, than it is to like be repeating the old thing. And I think that's what's happening here, right? Like I loved climbing in season 3 when I was was it 2? When they just had a number and it was like, oh, you go up to like 1400.
Yeah.
And that felt like a huge accomplishment. But then I would go down to like 1390 and be like, oh, well, I have to wait a year until I can, really climb again. And I need the MMR reset. Remember when we used to complain about MMR so much on accounts? To be like, I have to get my MMR reset. I need a hard reset. Otherwise, I'm never going to be able to get out of Diamond 4 hell. Right? Now you don't have that as much because the MMR's reset, or like soft reset, so much more often. So.
True. I don't know. I think it's all tricky, right? And it's like, it's also impossible to satisfy everybody, because my take as somebody who plays League every day is going to be very different than somebody who plays it for a couple of hours every week, and therefore has a hard time reaching their rank and needs a reset.
But for them, they might argue they don't want it to reset, right? Because like I can only play 10 games a month. I don't want it to reset after 4 months. I want to be able to like actually see where I get, right? Because 30 games is not enough to find your true MMR. Right? Unless
I do want to say, the moment you mentioned 2-month preseason, something shifted in my body in a very negative way. Like,
I thought so, because no one cares about solo queue in preseason.
Yeah, I do not like long preseasons. That's also why when Poppy mentioned, what did I say?
You called him Poppy? His steadfast presence is inspiring us all.
What is wrong with me?
I'll
I'm
try.
like I'm like
was up too early
Poby
today.
and Cubby now. You know, he reverse swept over in CL. You know.
What I wanted to say is, when Cubby mentioned this thing with solo queue around worlds, like, I instantly saw the opportunity to create hype solo queue with like split ending at some point after worlds and whatnot. Like, I think we just need to find ways to make it hype and exciting. And preseason is everything other than exciting. I hate preseason. It's like if we have to have so many splits, we might as well make split one entire preseason with craziness unfolding along the way. Like, I would be okay with that.
I've got it. Sorry, Cubby.
It's terrible now for me too, because like that's when I play the most solo queue, just to like see what's up with the game. Like I think my accounts right now are sitting like, I think I have 3 total like solo queue games played this split. I play flex with friends, but those lobbies are the worst because it's not very fun when you're like a mid to high diamond player and then they put you on support when you're playing with 4 gold players every game. But that's just kind of how our group rules. So
split
anyway.
1, fearless draft. If you've played the champion in your last 5 games, you can't play the champ. Like, people love fearless draft. You can't play it again, right? Yeah, more like esports.
We
right?
want rank to feel more like the pro experience. How many times has Riot said that before?
Yeah,
that would be hilarious.
I really want
Are
you
you
to play an
kidding me?
Enchanter here. It's like, sorry,
I would love
my
to
last
see
5 games were Nami, Lulu, Milio, Soraka, and Janna. I don't have anything.
Just seeing like
but
the rotation.
No bans.
Yeah.
Oh,
my
actually,
god.
that's it. Get rid of bans.
That'd be the worst.
You have to rework the entire client for this, but who gives a shit? Get rid of bans, but you can't play things you played in your last 5 games.
But worth.
Yeah, actually.
That'd be the worst. I feel like if they made the number 3, maybe 3.
I mean, I only ever one trick, so this would
play 4
absolutely
champs.
screw me.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, you're gonna kill the dream of so many solo queue players.
Yeah.
Imagine having an iron account and playing in that.
Yeah, that would be.
You wouldn't be able to tell if it was in effect or not because people just play random shit.
Dude.
Oh my god.
Flowers YouTube videos are gonna go crazy on your patch.
I think the general sentiment seems to be people are burnt on 3 rank splits a year, and I can understand it. It is exhausting to hit like a new peak and then just see it disappear, and to have worked to get there and see it disappear. I totally get that. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
Oh, he's thinking. You can see Cubby thinking.
Go NA teams. Woo!
Go NA. Go
if you enjoyed the episode, please give us a like. You can comment down below as well. We try and pick up a comment every week on something that someone has said that's interesting. And obviously we didn't do it this week, partly because I didn't look, but also partly because none of you said anything interesting, obviously. Be more interesting, please. Like and subscribe. I'm Medic. This is Cubby. That's Broxah. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. And we will see you all next time.